Hey there gamers, welcome back to the Board Game Co channel, and this is a preview of Scarce. Well, hey there gamers, it's Professor Meg here, and welcome back to the Board Game Co channel. Today we have a preview of Scarce. Thank you to the publisher for sponsoring this video, and you can check out the Kickstarter link down below because this campaign is now live. Now everything you see in front of you is also a prototype copy, especially this double layer board. It's double layered, but it's two different floors that you're maneuvering around, which we will get into, but this is a prototype copy, so please keep that in mind, and you can check out their Kickstarter page to see everything that they have planned for the final copy. Now in Scarce, something that's very interesting is there's both a cooperative and a competitive mode for you to play through. You can either play cooperatively, moving around the two different boards, both fighting off the AI enemies, such as the different foes and the sea creature that you're fighting, and you're also trying to be out against a clock against the other city that is coming to get you, or you can play competitively, which still has an endgame trigger, but then you're playing against the other players at the table. In Scarce, players are working toward these city cards, which are going to be used to power up the power plant that carries your city around. So you're going to do this by contributing different minerals and other resources to these different cards, and then these actions will also become available for all players. Now you are trying to climb your way up to the top, and we'll get more into the city cards and how you achieve them and what they do more in just a second, but definitely keep that in mind. In Scarce, players are going to have their vessels, which you're going to use to carry all of these resources, and also have different modules that you'll be able to add to your vessel, different abilities and things like that, as well as your crew, which will give you different actions throughout the game and better abilities, but you are also using your cards that you start off with, as well as deck building and purchasing new cards to also take better actions as well. Now, at the beginning of the game, whether you are playing cooperatively or competitively, you are going to stock both tiers of the board with these different tiles. They are all numbered because the different areas correspond to what is directly below them, but you do have an option to play either with the two boards stacked or with them side by side and next to each other. The game will start off with tokens all over the surface as well as the sea floor, and players will be moving around both collecting some, which will provide energy or supply, but also attempting to take the different minerals from these spots as well. Now the tiles are double-sided, so for example this one here does provide an energy, but on the other side it also provides a card that a player would be able to draw. Now the card system is really interesting, we'll get into that in a second, but this is the area where those cards would be drawn from, and then you would be able to keep this tile on your player board for endgame scoring. But players are going to be moving around the board, collecting tiles, attempting to take the mineral tiles, as well as going into these event tiles, which will trigger different events that are drawn from these cards. An example of one of those events is something like, the carcass of a mutated whale is floating nearby. Search for it for resources, and you would gain 1 supply. Rig it with explosives to distract any foe ship coming by, which would be -2 supply. Move 1 foe meeple 2 spaces in any direction. Or sink it to lure the creatures below. -1 supply. Move the sea monster to an underwater space of your choice. So that's an example where the events can really interact with the different things that you're doing when you are landing on those spots. You do have to land on the spots for these different tokens to trigger, but they can be really, really interesting and carve the path of what you're trying to do, because the tokens can be extremely important. Now, if any of those foes reach the central city tile on the surface, then the compass will move forward 4 spaces. Now, you don't know what the compass is yet, but that's kind of the time track for the game. It's going to cause a lot of actions to trigger every time that it moves forward, and the players are going to be moving it forward pretty often. There's a card in each player's deck when they start off in the game that's going to move the compass forward, and there are going to be additional cards and game effects like this that will cause it to move. Now, when it hits a certain point, that's when the game end is triggered, which can look different both in a competitive and a cooperative game, but we're going to take a look at what the turn order looks like now, because that's when the compass is going to move. So if a foe meeple was to reach the center city tile, that's when this compass here would move forward 4 spaces, trigger the corresponding effect, and that is when the foe's card would then move on to the next most powerful card below it. So now they're even harder to defeat. They would then be moved back to where they started, but they are now even harder to defeat in going forward. On a player's turn, you are going to start off by drawing 4 cards, and your cards are going to be your actions throughout your turn in a lot of different ways. Now, where I could only draw 3 cards, you would then shuffle your discard pile and continue drawing. So when drawing 4 cards, the first thing that you are going to look for is an energy leakage card. Now, all decks start with one, so you are pretty likely to draw one, and I did, but I also have mechanical assistance. Now, what energy leakage means is this compass is going to move forward, and this is going to be played to my discard. This is causing the game to end sooner, but it could trigger effects that I would like. For example, the next one that I would move it toward is moving the beast that is in the seafloor 2. Now, the beast in the seafloor is actually with a different player, so I might not mind that. So in that case, I will allow this to be discarded because I can use my card in a different way. So we'll move the compass forward once, and the seafloor monster will move twice toward the other player. Now I have these 3 cards available to me to play, and the thing at the top is my movement that I would be able to do. So I could either move 1 on the surface, 1 down below, 1 on the surface, or 3 or 2. Some cards give you movement on the surface, some cards give you movement on the seafloor, and you really have to choose which cards you are going to use when to know when you need to move. Now, mechanical assistance also provides an ability, which I could play the card for the ability instead, which it is to ignore and discard the energy leakage card, which is this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hold on to it, but there are reasons to also hold on to cards to discard, which I will get to in just a second. Now we also have extract minerals here. This is when you're going to be able to gain minerals if you are on a mineral tile. There are some things that you gain immediately, such as energy and supply or the event cards, but to gain the minerals you have to have specific cards that allow you to do so. Now this does also cause the compass to move yet again, and this one also has a symbol meaning that all of the foes are going to move as well. Now again, if I played this card, the compass moving forward at this time would only gain me an energy, so that's not too bad, and that may be a reason to use this card for its ability. But there are also reasons to discard cards. You are able to discard cards to purchase crew members for their purchase price, or different things which you can add to your vessels. Now on your vessel, you're going to start off with 2 different spots for your crew, and you'll always have those 2 different spots. So you're able to discard cards to hire crew, and if you ever want a 3rd crew member, you can always swap them out, but you then lose a crew and you always have 2 in play on your vessel. Now the different things that you add to your vessel are different, and everything else is permanent. There are vessel modules, which are ways that you can pick up the different types of minerals that your starting ship isn't able to pick up, and there are also additional vessel abilities that you're able to attach to your vessel. So looking at your starting vessel here, you start off with 1 vessel ability and you have enough room to add 3 more. But if you purchase one of these vessel modules, you are then able to attach that down onto your ship, and you are now able to hold that type of mineral as well. Now, as the game progresses, it may not be necessary to purchase every single type of module, but you will definitely need to purchase some of them to be able to meet these different city missions. To contribute to the city missions, players will also have to have an available card to discard from their hand. So if they did want to put a certain type of mineral onto a mission, they would have to have it available and then remove that mineral from their board and place it onto the current mission that they are helping with. Now, once a mission is completely satisfied and all of the different requirements are met, the player who has the majority will put their token on the particular card. So you can see where these tokens are already placed, but this one is a tie, meaning that both players will leave their tokens on the board because it is victory points for you at the end of the game. Now, any of these cards that have been unlocked also provide actions that you are able to do on your turn. For example, this one here is to pay an energy from your supply to move once on the seafloor. So that is a way that you are able to take other actions that are eventually unlocked through the game as you get more and more powerful. Another thing that players are able to do is to contribute both uranium, energy, and supply onto these different boards because it is necessary to trigger the end of the game. Depending on the number of players, you'll have to meet a specific threshold. So in a 2-player game, you would have to have a certain number of uranium, supply, and energy on the SETI card to be able to successfully win at the end of the game. Once players have met all of those 3 conditions in a cooperative game, that's when you would then do endgame scoring, as long as none of the other triggers that would have potentially ended the game have happened before you've reached that goal. Now, looking at the table in front of you, that's how you are interacting with the city, the different events you'll trigger as you encounter them on the board here, and there are different encounters as well that you will have when you are on the sea floor. If you choose to end your turn on the sea floor, you'll have an encounter, and they can be quite dangerous. For example, this one here is a vampire squid, which you would need to pay energy to be able to fight, and if you do so, you would gain a supply, but if you fail, you have to pay a penalty, which is losing a mineral of the player's choice, and this dial would also be moved ahead by 1 on the compass. So that is everything here that players are interacting with, and then you are also purchasing your crew and your different vessel things here. And on top of that, you have the cards that you are able to acquire throughout the game. So you have both player cards and enhanced cards, and you're able to purchase these depending on the different things that are triggering, and obviously some of them will provide different things for you, such as the enhanced cards will provide victory points at the end of the game. Now, this is important both in a cooperative and a competitive game, whereas in a cooperative game they give you a certain threshold to meet, and in a competitive game obviously all victory points matter, so that could be a reason for you to purchase specific cards. But the sooner you have your deck built with certain cards that have a great synergy, the sooner you'll get going and be doing really well in the game. So the different types of cards you may purchase may depend on that, but something that is extremely interesting is whenever you purchase from a specific pile, you will then refill from the other. This card system can be really interesting as the number of cards that are available can really depend on what has been purchased before. So you have a greater availability of cards that haven't been chosen and ones that are being chosen from. Nothing new is coming out until you buy from the other pile. So it can be a reason to try to purchase from different things, but this is triggered in different ways, so it can be really tricky. Now, the faux symbol can be triggered in multiple different ways, but one way that it can be triggered is when this dial crosses the faux symbol. When that happens, the different foes are going to move either toward the closest target or the central city, whichever is closest, and they are trying to move toward that city to try to move this compass forward and forward. But there's a particular symbol on this board, which is right here, and when that trigger happens, there has to be at least 4 minerals on this city tile, otherwise the players will immediately lose the game. That's right, you can immediately lose the game when playing cooperatively if you don't plan ahead for this. It's something that you can absolutely plan ahead for and make sure that you are working toward, but if you don't, there is something that can cause you to just lose the game. So you want to make sure that this is something that you are always working toward. Now, due to this central city being so important, when this dial does reach its end, it doesn't actually trigger the end game quite yet, but it takes this enemy city tile and places it on an outer edge, and that will then move in toward the city. When that tile then reaches the city, that is what will trigger the game end, as they have reached the city before you are able to completely power it up. And it is pretty sad, but you'll add up victory points and see where you all land anyway. One other thing I'd love to read out, which is a bit more of the flavor that's in the game, but this is one of the events that you would trigger if you went on one of the question mark event spaces down in the lower area of the board, and it reads, "The sensors read a sharp increase in radioactivity in this area. You can choose to get out of here to avoid system damage, +1 supply, move your craft 1 space, search the surrounding waters, +2 energy and draw an encounter card, or search the seafloor for something of value, flip the token if standing on a token." So that's a really fun way that you could try to flip your token for the ability that's underneath it, even if you're not able to carry the particular mineral that's under it, but also anything could happen, so you're not really sure what could be under there. Overall, in Scarce, it's going to be really important to juggle a lot of things. You're trying to move around the board as much as possible, and honestly, that is the most fun part because you're picking up all of these different things, having these encounters, and having a lot happen. But if you don't pay attention and try to stop these different foes that are coming in toward your city, things can ramp up really quickly, and you can lose a lot of time that was important to use for different actions throughout the game. You're also able to have these different encounters that happen when you go to the different question mark spots, and when you go down to the surface level, when you are down on the seafloor with the different monsters. It can get quite scary and really, really competitive, but it can also be very valuable to you if you get down in there, get a couple things, and get out. One of the most important things about the game is going to be your vessel and making sure you upgrade it as much as possible, but also balancing out the different vessel ships when you're playing in a cooperative mode to make sure that everyone is able to contribute and pick up the different types of minerals. You don't need everyone having the same type of module, so making sure that you spread things like that out can make everyone really important and help you move toward the end of the game. As I said, this game is now live. You can check out the Kickstarter link down below to see everything that they have planned. I have been Professor Meg, and thank you all for watching the Board Game Co channel. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.